we've used the company to structure this particular challenge for you. The company is real, but we've not spoken to them to say, is it okay if we do this? So any of you that get really enthusiastic and pick up the phone and say, don't do that, because they're there as an example. But they are real, but and they've got a very nice website actually. They're a 200-year-old company, at least, and they're very keen now to reinforce their commitment to sustainability. And so we're going to imagine that the board has agreed to go ahead of a mobile app project. They want to have this app built. And the purpose of the app is to raise awareness about hunger, responsible production, consumption of food, and increase fundraising. So their main line of business is seeds and oil-bearing grains. So that's how they make their money. They've been shipping them around the world for hundreds of years. And they think it's in their interests to be able to present the sustainable face of Bunge to the world. And that's what they want to do. So the business case for this isn't necessarily about finance. The business case for this is we're going to spend a certain amount of money to raise awareness, to look like the good guys. It's reputational. So it's a reputational thing that they are trying to achieve. You're going to do that by delivering a product into a very busy marketplace. So the board said, we're going to launch a mobile app. And this app will have these objectives. We're going to raise awareness of the UN Global Responsibility Goals. Are you all aware of these? Yeah? That's good. They're going to encourage understanding of the way that we grow, share and consume food, because there is a real concern in the Western world that we don't actually understand where our food comes from. We think it comes in little plastic packages and lives on the shelves. We do not understand. It's very, it's a huge gap between how life is and how life should be. So they want to try and bridge that gap. They want to highlight the suffering in the world from hunger, and they want to generate funds for appropriate charities. Now, remember I said earlier on about getting your objectives clear. The board has given us these objectives. But can we meet them all in one go? What if we can't? What do we do? What kind of negotiation would we go through? Now this is where the project manager and the business analyst would be involved in answering this question. Because the project sponsor and their board, they're big idea thinkers. They've said, yeah, we need to do something about reputation, we like an app, we think we can do this kind of thing. Make it so, number one. That's a Star Trek reference, if you weren't familiar with that one. No? But what exactly is it? What if I could do 2 out of the 4? What if I could do 3 out of the 4, but it was really expensive? What if I... So you see the kind of trade-offs that we're going to have to think about, and that's the kind of stuff that we're going to get you to talk about shortly when you think about the thing that you might try and build. And we're going to use gamification of the app to help generate those funds. We know how to do that. So these are the Sustainability Development Goals. That's one that nearest Nickton as a reminder to me and to you. But you're all happy with these. Yeah, that's good. So the company, I've actually already told you some of this. They supply agricultural commodities, grains and oil seeds. Down the side here you can see the kinds of things: barley, quinoa, sugarcane, from all over the world. These things are essential ingredients in our food. We transport them and connect farmers to customers. That's the way the company sees itself, as connecting farmers to companies. They provide ingredients and know-how to some of the biggest food processors around the world. They are global. And when I say global, I absolutely love this picture on their website, so I've ripped it off and showed it to you. Absolutely fantastic, showing you where all the wheat comes from, where it goes to, where the corn comes from, where it goes to, where the soy comes from, where it goes to. Absolutely extraordinary how connected this all is. So the challenge for today is to create the concept for a mobile app and outline your next steps. So that's today. The second day, you're going to come back and do a presentation of both that concept. It doesn't mean that you stop after the day. You can develop it further. That will be fine. And your PID, which is the next steps solidified. Remember, the PID is, if you like, the description of the project in a book. When I say a book, they're normally anywhere between 80 and 120 pages on a big project. Yours isn't going to be that. It's going to be a side of A4 with 4 or 5 headings. So yeah, let's be realistic. So the concept. What we want you to do for the concept is give it a name, give it some branding, tell us what the user experience is going to be like, what makes the users join in and want to do it, how will we communicate with them, in what way does it surface the sponsoring company and the charities that we want to raise the money for, and the user provide feedback. What's the underlying technology? How will that technology be put into place? And your next steps. What did you say? I'm running out. So these are the bits of the PID that I think are worth mentioning. So these are your headings on your couple of pages of A4. What's the plan going to be? What kind of roles and responsibilities will you need to make this happen? Some guesswork about resources and budgets. We're not going to rely on the fact that you've said it's going to cost £10,000. That's it. You nailed down. What's your development approach? If you've got any technologists on your team, you can think about different ways that this thing could be built.
I saw there's like 2 days.
Sorry?
No.
Oh, you're not? Sorry. Okay. So here's Surround Sugar. You're going to come back and do the pitch in your assigned teams, and you're going to present to us no longer than 10 minutes. I would make the target 8 minutes if I were you, because then you can hit 10. And we'll have 5 minutes for Q&A, and we'll cycle through the teams, and everybody should take part. So now, what I wanted to do was, because, am I right to dive straight in? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wanted to talk briefly about gamification. Because it's quite a common. If you do a Google search, it will say literally that. That is exactly what comes up when you do a Google search. Gamification. One of the key points about gamification is it's very closely related to learning. Learning and developing mastery of skills and techniques is a very human thing. We gain great satisfaction from developing skills. And over the last few years, lots of people have been looking at gamification. And there'll be lots of examples, which I will show you later. But you will know some. So I'm going to ask you about them as we go through. Now, it wouldn't be right to be in a university talking about anything without presenting you an academic model. So here's a layered academic model which describes the bits that make up gamification. starting at the top with this big structuring devices, big picture, and I'll show some details about these things in a moment. So the dynamics is the big picture, the mechanics is the middle level picture, the mechanisms that we use to gamify nearly everything these days, and the components of the small scale little bits and pieces that you will recognise. So let's start with the dynamics and then bring them all in together. So this model is based on studying games and gameplay, because there is no human society that does not play games. That was a double negative, sorry. Every human society plays games. Humans left to their own devices will play games. Inevitably, it's part of our makeup. It's probably a very useful thing in evolutionary terms to be motivated by gamey stuff. So these five are the kind of five main patterns for structuring games at a high level. So what the first thing is constraints. If you think about role-playing games, I can be a wizard, or I can be a maven, or I can be a dwarf, or whatever. You can tell I don't actually play those kind of games, but the notion of constraints, if I'm playing chess, my bishop can move on a diagonal line, and my knight can move 2 squares forward and 1 to the side, that kind of thing. So there are always constraints in games, because that's how you make the challenge. Emotions are important. Eliciting and enriching people's emotions through gameplay. Nice examples about that. Yeah, I really want to talk about this one a bit, because when we talk about gamification, there's been quite a bit of work on this. If I were to say to you, extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, would that scare the living daylights out of you, or is that a sensible thing? Does that make sense? It depends what kind of course you're doing, whether you've heard that. Some of you will have heard that on your courses, I've no doubt. But it's this idea of we're motivated to do things either extrinsically, from without. In other words, I'm going to pay you to do it, and you're going to do it. Thanks, I like the money, I'll do it. Or intrinsic motivation. That's like wanting to climb that rock. It's just there. I've got to do it. It makes me happy to do this. Nobody pays me. That would be a good scam, wouldn't it? So emotions, ideally, you make people happy by finding something that is intrinsically motivating. Do you have a favourite app game on your phone that you want to keep coming back to and doing again and again, just because it makes you happy to get that flapping bird over that fence, or get that little skeleton to drop down through all of those levels, or keep that ball on that path without falling down? It makes you happy doing it. That's your motivation. If we had a lot more time, I'd want to open up a discussion here about failure as a motivator. Is it important to fail? Yeah, because I think it is. Have any of you seen the film Dawn Wall? Right. Last year there were 2 American climbers that did the most outrageous climb in the Yosemite Valley. And they promised to do it as a team, and this one guy could not do this one pitch. It was about 120 foot from left to right on this granite face, and he fell off it, and he fell off it for 5 days in a row. He ripped the tips off his fingers doing it. He kept coming back and back and back and back. The most extraordinary film, well worth a watch, and it's on Netflix. I don't get a percentage for that.
What is the name?
Dawn Wall.
Dawn Wall?
Dawn Wall. Yeah, it's the first part of the valley that gets lit up first thing in the morning. This big wall of rock goes bright as the sun's on it. So emotions, we elicit emotions. Narrative, very important to we as a species are driven by story. There are some arguments that suggest that even the way our brain works and thinks is derived from story. Story is really important to us. So the structuring device could be a story. That's bad. Progression is very important. You want to see improvement. That's why I say on this gamification stuff, the reason I think it's in our psychology is so that we can get better at stuff. You see all these lovely little films, twee films on the internet of little baby bear cubs fighting with one another. They're learning to do something. They're playing a game, but they're learning to do something. So it's really important. Relationships. It's really important to try and factor that in to your team building. I think I wanted to say this on the next slide, so I'll put off that. Now, what I will say about this, so this is now the second layer down on that model, and I won't necessarily talk about all of them because of the time, but these are kind of elements of game that are important. The two I want to talk about, these two over here, competition and cooperation. About 3 Christmases ago, there's an annual kind of event in our family. I typically buy a board game that we all get together and play. And 3 years ago, I bought a board game called Pandemic. And Pandemic isn't like any of the other games we've ever had. There is no winner. You all play together as a team and you live or die together. And I mentioned that it was 3 years ago because it's taken me 3 years to get anybody interested in playing this game because they wanted to compete. They were so keen on competing that they can't play it. What, we're all on the same side? I mean, you can't beat you. Not interested. So, I think when we did eventually get around to it this year, actually they really enjoyed it. And we had several goes because you've got to save the world from a pandemic, so it's really worth doing. So these are the kind of middle level mechanisms that game designers and others will present you to lure you in. Now, if you take one look at your phone, you'll see the examples of that, the way they try and lure you in. So these low-level components I'm not actually going to say much about because I want to move us through. But you'll recognise these things: boss fights. You've got no idea. Your games, your levels, your leaderboards, all of that kind of stuff. So let me move you on to an example of how we do this stuff to you. You should recognise that. Yeah. So that's how we get into your minds and twist them to make you do what we want. So this one is my cycle to work thing. This is how they try and make sure that I do more cycling. You see what they make, these 77 trips. Well done, Steve. You get a badge for cycling to work. This one is my UK climbing logbook, where I can compete with my fellow climbers to see who's climbed the hardest climb, to put it up in the list, and they can eat their hearts out because they can't get up it and I can, or vice versa. So this one is from a very IT-specific thing called Stack Overflow, which is a generic support website. And basically what happens is people send in queries and problems for particular bits of IT, and other specialists throughout the world answer their problems. And the more problems that they answer and the better answers that they give, the more their rating goes up. So the more their rating goes up, the more people look at them. The better their rating is, the more likely they are to get a really decent job. So there's this kind of feedback here. So what I wanted to do now is to make, I've got 3 very tiny videos showing you 3 slightly different gamified apps, just to give you some background ideas for dreaming at your own concept.